Hey guys, my name's Hans Coon. We're here at Oak Park Farms. We were established in 1850. I'm the 6th generation, currently farming with my father, uncle, and cousin. And we make up the group that does the daily decisions here on the farm. We farm about 5,000 acres, and about 250 acres of that is hazelnuts, which is my little kingdom inside of all of that. There's about 8 different families that are part of the farm who are either supported by it or actively working on it. And we're going to be going around showing you some different equipment and some different crops that we grow, and hopefully you'll get a better idea of what it is we do out here. Alright guys, so this is our shop. Farm has a lot of moving parts on it. Specifically here at Oak Park Farms, we've got about 400 engines and about 300 pieces of rolling stock. So when we say rolling stock, we mean anything with wheels and an engine. Well, with wheels on it. Rolling stock could be stuff that doesn't have an engine on it. When we decided we needed a full-time mechanic. So there's a guy here on our farm who really doesn't do anything out in the field, doesn't do anything with plants. He just is supporting us and making sure that we can go out and keep doing our jobs. That's his service truck over there, one with the red box in it and the boom lift, and so he can go out and fix anything that needs to get fixed. As you can see here, he's working on a truck and making it so that it is back up to speed. It's a very old truck. It had the axle cracked under it. So aside from just fixing stuff that's broken and maintaining stuff that isn't broken, we try and build a lot of our own equipment, and so, or just anything that we might need. And so if we're going to be building something, that starts over here on the metal rack, and we can take that and cut it in the saw, which is the gray thing. And then if we look all the way to our left, that big green thing actually came off of a aircraft carrier and is meant for bending metal into specific angles and shapes. So they were using that to make aircraft wings, and now we use it to make just about anything else. In the back, we have milling machines and lathes and welders and torches, and if we can think of it, basically we can build it. So this is a key part of our operation. It's really busy in the wintertime, not so busy in the summertime, but thanks to Derek, who's keeping everything running, there's always a project or something going on in here. Okay guys, so this is our sprayer, and what it does is really important because it keeps all of our crops weed free. It puts on fertilizers to help the plants that we want to grow big and strong. And what it's doing is substituting spray for hand labor. So what this is doing is allowing us to grow a lot of different crops very efficiently. And what is really special about this sprayer is that if we look at these nozzles up along through here, you see all these different wires and different shapes. And what those different shapes are for is to form different sizes of water droplets that's coming out of here. And then all the wires you're seeing are so that the GPS coordinates that the sprayer has in it from satellites can tell where the sprayer's been, how much it's put on, exactly where it put it, and what we need to be doing efficiently to get the best crop that we can. So this is one of our most expensive pieces of equipment. It's one of our most used pieces of equipment, and we can honestly say that it's our most important piece of equipment currently on this farm. Okay guys, so this is a hazelnut tree. Now the name alone is kind of a misnomer because a hazelnut doesn't actually want to be a tree. A hazelnut wants to be a bush. The reason we're turning it into a tree is so that we can maximize the production of hazelnuts and really maintain the quality as well as being able to pick them up and work efficiently around the orchard. So if we look down here, these are called suckers, and as you can see, these guys don't look very happy. That's because I've sprayed them out so they don't grow. But what this whole plant wants to do is be about this size of trunk and about this big, and just keep going up and just be a great big old bush and not a tree. So what I'm going to keep doing for the next 50 years is spraying these things so that they don't pull energy away from the main trunk and therefore pull energy away from all the hazelnuts I'm trying to grow. This is a second leaf tree, which means that it's been in the ground for 2 years. Now, a hazelnut tree can be quite old, it could be 5 or 6 years old, but until you put it in the ground, it doesn't really start acquiring leaf age. So for whatever that's worth, that's a fun little fact that you can impress your friends and parents with later. There's lots of different kinds of trees. This is a McDonald. Later on, we're going to be seeing Websters, Yorks, Yamhills, and Sacagaweas. Now, how can you tell one hazelnut tree from another? It gets a little bit complicated, but what I do is we're going to be looking at leaves. So, if we get in here and we look at this leaf, we're going to be looking at the color. We're going to look how it crinkles in just a little bit, and along with how the color and the shape and the overall attitude, we look at the general shape of a tree. So between the characteristics of a leaf and the structure of the tree itself, you can usually get a pretty good idea of what variety a hazelnut is. Okay guys, so water is really important. I think we all know that. You're gonna hear probably some people talk about, water being the most important natural resource, which is true. So we have to put water on our trees to make sure that they grow big and healthy. And we're pulling water out of the creek. Now, when you look at a creek, you have to remember that a creek is usually connected to a river, which is connected to an aquifer or a spring or something like that. So the water that we're pulling out of here, technically speaking, isn't creek water. This is the Muddy Creek. So this isn't actually Muddy Creek water. This is Mackenzie River water that we bought from the federal government that got pumped by a special pumping association's pump and ended up all the way down here. So something as simple as water can be as complicated as having to deal with 5 government agencies just in order to use the stuff in your backyard, which is important so that we don't run out of it. Now, with all this stuff going around here, it can be a little bit intimidating, but it's actually pretty simple. This is our power line. Because it's too expensive for us to actually have the power company put a line down here, this is just a generator. So all it's doing is making the electricity to run everything else. If we look down here in the creek, we can see a tire. Now that's not us littering. That tire is sitting on top of a pump assembly. And the reason the tire is there is so that we can reach in with an excavator arm and just pull it out. So the tire will take a lot of damage, it twists and it flexes and it doesn't break. That's why I've got it on top of our pump. Now the pump, it's going to take power from the generator. It's going to pump water up out of the creek. It's going to come through here. And this is an automated filtration system. These guys here are filters to make the water nice and clean. That way we don't plug up our irrigation lines. Now the reason why it looks so complicated is because it knows when to clean itself. It measures the pressure in each one of these holding containers, and when it starts to change, then it'll turn one off, flush it while the other 2 are going, and just keep the whole process moving without us having to check it all the time. Now if we come up to here, this is in 2 parts a valve to stop the water from coming back down after we pump it up, and 2, it's a metering gauge. So we're measuring exactly how much water we're taking out so that we're just always in compliance. Now the big tank off to your left is for fertilizer. Now what we're doing there is we're feeding the baby trees on just a little bit of a drip. So every little once in a while, along with their drink of water, they're getting a nibble of food. This helps them push their roots down farther, looking for food, establish the tree, and makes it so that they can fight off disease and insects that much better in the first couple of years of their life. Okay guys, so we just had a look at some other hazelnut trees. Now this guy, as you can tell, has got nice big green suckers on him. He is trying really hard to be a bush. Now,
I don't want that, so why have I let it happen? I've let it happen because I need these little guys. So these hazelnuts, what we're trying to get, and what you don't want to do is spray chemical onto a hazelnut, because even though it won't hurt it, and would go through a wash plant later, and you're going to be eating the nut inside, so none of the chemical would actually be touching what you're going to be eating. It's just not a good idea. Better safe than sorry, right? So we're going to have to let these things grow and mature until we can get these hazelnuts picked up, which I want to do really fast so that these don't get any bigger. Because if these are going to get bigger, right, they get about yay tall, then I'm not only going to be spraying the suckers, I'm going to be spraying the limbs that I want to keep. So it's all about timing. Timing is of the essence in this. Now, this tree is much bigger than the little guys that we saw, but it's not that much older. This is only 2 years older. These hazelnut trees are going to double in size, and maybe a little bit more every year for the next 7 years or so. And these should get to be about 15 to 20 feet tall when they get to full maturity status at 10 years old. So these are 4 years old. They've got another 6 solid years of growing, and hopefully by then we can get ahead of them. Okay guys, so we talked about looking at leaves and tree structure. This, if we kind of recognize it, is a McDonald leaf, a little bit crinkly, not very well defined veins. Doesn't flare out much. It really kind of wants to curl back in on itself. Now this is a Webster leaf. Now, as you can see, it usually tries to sit just a little bit flatter before curling out on the ends. And a big difference is the distinction in the veins. Now it's not going to be true about every single leaf, but just in general, as you're looking at a tree, 50 feet away at 50 miles an hour, as we like to say, or road speed. If you're just driving past a hazelnut orchard, if you're looking for big characteristics, in general, a Webster's going to have more defined venular structure on the leaves and be slightly less curled in than a McDonald leaf. Also, a little bit harder to tell, but if you really get in here and look, the nuts themselves are actually quite different. So these are Webster's. They're just kind of almost a neon orange, pretty dang shiny, and you can tell a fairly uniform color throughout the entirety of the shell. And these are McDonald's. And you can see that they're a much darker color. They've got stripes, very distinct stripes running through them. And occasionally here, there'll be a slightly lighter color up near the top and get darker as they go down towards the end of the nut. Okay, so we're here in the final orchard, and we've got 2 different types of hazelnut trees. On your left are going to be Sacagaweas. These are a kernel hazelnut, just like everything else we've been seeing. And on the left, on your right, we've got Yamhills. So these are also a kernel variety. Why I'm telling you that they're kernel varieties is important because there's 2 main delineations for a hazelnut. You either have an in-shell or you have a kernel. Everything we're growing is kernels. That's because the main market for the other type of nut, in-shell, is China. It's the primary consumer of in-shell hazelnuts from Oregon. Now, I didn't want the farm to be reliant on just one type, on just one primary market, which is why I decided to go with kernels. Now, kernels are used for everything that you can think of with hazelnuts. They're used for flavoring, they're used in chocolates, they're used ground up, they're sold whole. If you're buying a hazelnut in a store, you're probably buying a kernel hazelnut because the smaller nut delivers a lot more of that hazelnutty flavor. Now, the reason we have all these different types of hazelnut trees, we've already talked about the McDonald's and the Webster's, and out here we're among Sacagaweas and Yamhills. Why are we growing so many different types of hazelnut trees, or different varieties? And that's because you don't want to put all your eggs into one basket. Right now, there isn't any specific demand for a specific variety of hazelnut trees. No one says, hey, I just want Sacagaweas. Like with apples, when you go to the store, if someone hands you a Granny Smith and you really wanted a Fuji, like doesn't matter that they're both apples, you really wanted the Fuji. It's what you like the taste of better. So hazelnuts aren't there yet, but I think that in a couple decades they probably will be. So, all right guys, so we all know that it rains a lot in Oregon. And while that's nice, it keeps everything really green, one of the problems we run into is that soil has a natural water holding capacity. which in simpler terms means that specific types of soil hold different amounts of water, and anything above that actually hurts the soil and doesn't let it properly breathe. So what we're doing here with this big windmill is helping soil breathe properly. If we look down here into this big hole, we're going to see a black pipe. Now the black pipe there on the right, that is connected out to all this entire network of black pipes just under the ground, which is helping direct the water down to this point. Now when the water gets here, this windmill, using the power of the wind, is just going to lift it. Just keep lifting it up. If we look down in here, we're going to see a bunch of little round circles, because circles are usually round. And what those are flaps. And so as this thing lifts up, the flaps are closed, right? Coming up, water's on top of the flaps, it keeps it closed, and it stops. Then as it goes down, it goes letting more water into the system, and then whoosh, it pulls it back up. So all it's doing is just lifting the water up to ground height so that it can get sloped and carried away by gravity out to the creek. And all that is really important, again, to help the soil breathe. And the reason we're not doing it with an electric pump is because we would have to get power from all the way out there, which would be really, really expensive. So the reason we're doing this is because it's a very efficient and effective method, as well as being cost smart. So thanks very much for watching. If you have any questions for Rose or I, just let your teacher know and we will answer them in a future video.